Look, no spoilers or nothing, but I'm just going to point out the series credit as being one of the kickstarters of the comic book movie craze that made a household name out of the star of Swordfish and has had less than a 50% success rate of turning 60 years of genre-defying comic books into a passable movie, was given a chance to go out with a bang, but instead snoozes along until its characters literally stop to beat up a bunch of dudes with MCU written on them in big white letters. And you know what's really depressing? Is that chucklesome bit of subtlety could genuinely be the single most outright effort that's actually gone into Dark Phoenix. Do you care? Does anyone actually care? Serious question. Who are these maniacs who still care about the X-Men series? I mean, I was an X-Men fanatic as a kid, and even I struggled to give a toss about this franchise. It's so bland, so uninteresting. If it were a spice, it'd be flour. If it were a sexual position, it'd be jerking off in the corner. They're exactly two really good ones of these. Two good enough ones, and the rest suck. You ever wonder why they keep insisting the Logan movies are X-Men flicks? It's because mathematically the series' Rotten Tomatoes score is only passable if you do that. But hey, it's over now, right? Like, we know this is the end of the line. The people making the movie know it's the end of the line, and since not one single member of the cast can muster the enthusiasm to even open their eyes all the way, I think we can safely know they know it as well. Though, to be fair, doing reshoots on this while the studio's being bought out, and the entire internet celebrating your franchise's demise and reincarnation into, I don't know, a potentially actually good one, may, it turns out, be demoralizing to anyone not named Jennifer Lawrence, who, believe me, gets the most dignified experience of Dark Phoenix. Something I'd call a spoiler if, and this is true, they hadn't put it in the trailer. So it's 1992 this time around. You wouldn't know it because there's not actually any period detail, and, well, they neglect to slip in any mention of the actual world going on around these characters, so like, no Gulf War, no Few Good Men, no Sinead O'Connor facing the Pope, nothing like that. It's literally just a time when they can't use the internet. Other than that, looks like Thursday. But, with a space mission. See, in the new status quo here, the X-Men are actually beloved by the public. They get calls from the president asking for help and stuff, and they get to go on missions. It sounds incredible, doesn't it? It took 7 X-Men movies to explore the idea of them on missions. Now, pause for thought that this franchise somehow gave us Kevin Feige for a minute. Jean Grey gets to cry meanwhile, because while the X-Men are rescuing astronauts from a funky energy cloud, she gets all Fantastic Four and hit with the blast and sentences to a fate worse than death, which is having to reenact the B story from X-Men The Last Stand. Yep, the world's most powerful psychic has gone off the rails again. She crushes, kills, destroys, and we get the time-honored comic book debate about whether or not to kill her for the greater good for a minute or two, and then it's mostly a literal game of Frogger and trying to work out why Jessica Chastain and half the X-Men are even in this. Look, I go into every one of these hoping for a good time. Some faint spark of the potential, even a bare minimum live-action adaptation of those comic books or those animated shows could deliver. It's the easiest goddamn thing in the world. There's a character for literally any storyline you would want to swing for, and if you can't even be bothered to do that, just go with the baseline civil rights analogy or the faintly more contemporary LGBTQ one. How are these movies so bland? In this particular case, also apropos of that, thankfully the last or at least penultimate case, it's because nobody seems bothered in the slightest. I mean, maybe Simon Kinberg, because hilariously this is actually one of the better directed movies of this entire franchise, but otherwise, nobody seems even vaguely pleased to be there, and at the end I found out Hans Zimmer had whacked out the score for it, and even that was so passive in execution I didn't at any point take a second to drink it in or even really notice the score. It's a flatline, stone-cold, textbook example of something ending with a whimper. You know how the theme tune and the Cerebro door opening bit usually gets you at least a little pumped? They don't even include that. If it mustered any energy, you might at least be able to get in on some of the CG-driven, clunky, over-choreographed action beats, but because nobody besides James McAvoy seems to get a coherent character arc, there's no emotional investment on offer at all. The entire movie focuses on Jean Grey being taken over by a powerful alien force, but why on earth should you care about Jean Grey? You met this character once in another movie in which she barely had a role, and the only thing you can genuinely say to describe her now, after an entire other movie, is that she saw Jedi on theatrical. She's essentially the eponymous character, and her function here is literally nothing more than to read out story beats. Then there's Chastain's presence, which is very obviously the sad result of a hatchet job in hyperdrive. There's a story doing the rounds at the moment that the last set of reshoots was because it was too similar to presumably Captain Marvel, and you can believe it based on the little flakes that they've neglected here and there. You'll absolutely know it if you see it, trust me. The irony is, though, that they did that despite leaving in an opening that's literally a daylight set version of the better one from Shazam. Things like that just signal ineptitude, but to actually sit through Dark Phoenix feels way, way more just like observing apathy. I dug how it was shot, though. I gotta say, there's some neat visuals here and there. There's some terrible ones too, because let's be honest, when X-Men CGI is good, it's very, very good, and when it's bad, it's die another day. Then again, the scenes with Xavier and young Jean, they're actually really sweet, and there are a few interesting ideas flirted with early on, like the ethics of weighing up the lives of the smaller mutant species against like the way more plentiful humans. That's pretty cool, but even that gets undone less than 10 seconds later when Oscar winner Jennifer Lawrence tells a man off in a wheelchair for being lazy and not putting himself in harm's way in space. Part of me was really hoping that the New Mutants movie would get shunted to like Disney Plus next year, and I couldn't get why they'd still want to release it theatrically. Don't they have like a fifth set of reshoots or something to do on that? But after Dark Phoenix, I can see why you'd want another shot at ending this franchise with at least a stab at some dignity. I mean, since this still somehow isn't as bad as like The Last Stand or Origins Wolverine, which are 1-star movies, I gotta give this 2 stars, but no, this Phoenix does not rise. It like flails around in its grave and flames for a second before it fizzles out for 110 minutes, and regardless, that's it for the X-Men, okay? Like, next time we see them, they're applying for Avengers membership in a universe that has James Gunn as one of its overlords, and after this series so far, that genuinely is the Phoenix metaphor here. At least Late Night's a laugh, though. Admittedly, it falls apart a bit in the third act, but it's a damn fun time nonetheless. This is a fusion of Morning Glory with great news, cooked up by and starring Mindy Kaling as Molly. She's a chemical plant worker who lands her dream job writing for an older female chat show host, Catherine Newberry, who's played by Emma Thompson. So right away, you know who you'll think is the most awesome person in this movie. It's time-saving. I respect it. So Catherine's considered on the way out, though, being all of like 55 years old, and it falls on the mentor-mentee relationship that evolves between the two women to rediscover the missing spark in Catherine herself and the actual new voice of their show, all whilst dealing with her own personal dramas to boot. So at times it gets a little Devil Wears Prada does 30 Rock, but it works. Like, Thompson rocks naturally, and Kaling's perfectly good, but I didn't think it's quite as unique a character as I would have expected just from knowing Mindy Kaling's work. But there's a solid cable TV roster of supporting talent like Ike Barinholtz, Hugh Dancy, Reed Scott, Paul Walter Hauser, and the only reason to remake Pet Sematary, John Lithgow. It gets more a little wobbly when it comes time to tie itself back together and wrap things up. It doubles down on the saccharine factor to what feels like just an intolerable degree. But to be honest, the hit rate of the gags in Late Night, that's rapid and regular enough to power you right on through for a good time. It's 3 stars from me. I liked the pairing of Thompson and Kaling, and hell, I just love Thompson. Tell you who I've never warmed to, though. Liam Gallagher, and it's entirely on personality rather than talent, because clearly the guy is a bona fide rock star. Well, now we get to see him profiled as both a personality and a rock star by way of the rather slickly executed documentary As It Was, from directors Gavin Fitzgerald and Charlie Lightning. I love that name. This gets an astonishing level of access to Liam himself and his inner circle, and gives us a brief run through the events from like the breakup of Oasis through Liam's time fronting Beady Eye, up to his more recent move back into the spotlight as a solo artist, which is that's really the focus of the movie. The really clever part of it, though, is it never actually asks you to like or even particularly understand Liam. You know, the actual story being told, which is of this guy who, in his mind, conquered the world with his brother and now finds himself frustrated at the results without him. It's pretty engaging in either case, and it's Liam Gallagher, so it goes without saying it's easily the sweariest documentary you've seen in a while. It's an absolute must for Oasis fans, obviously. Pretty decent companion piece to Supersonic too, if you saw that. But we're still missing that Nebworth till the end era of Oasis, and someone's still yet to stick a contract in front of Noel, so someone might want to get on that. As it was, though, is a pretty punchy yet still kind of cool profile piece that's just an interesting musician documentary and a character study. 4 stars, roll with it. Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, rate, and review.